This is going to be a great session, and we're going to talk about redefining customer connections, personalized retention strategies for growth. What's it about? We're going to go on a journey, a journey through the evolving landscape of loyalty marketing, where innovative tech ecosystems pave the way for unparalleled customer retention. Drawing on SPARC Group LLC's expertise, we know SPARC Group, Brooks Brothers, Aeropostale, Forever 21, and the list goes on. We will discuss how data, AI, tech, and personalization work together to support long-term loyalty. You will leave, hopefully, with actionable insights to create cross-channel campaigns that drive long-term customer connections and boost revenue. So please welcome Djalal and Mike.
Hello. We'll do a quick round of intros, then we'll jump straight into it. My name is Djalal. I'm one of the founders of Ometria. Ometria is a customer data and experience platform. We work exclusively with brands. We help them understand their customers and communicate with them in a highly personalized way across all the relevant channels. Stop by booth 128. And Mike here, I'll let him do a quick intro, but Mike is a good friend. He also sits on our advisory board. And very much looking forward to the conversation. So over to you.
Cool. Well, thank you for the pre-intro. I'm Mike Dupuis. I'm the Chief Digital Officer at SPARC Group. We are a retail operating company overseeing 7 brands that are part of the ABG Simon portfolio. So I oversee e-commerce, digital marketing, and data strategies, and omni-channel for SPARC. Happy to be here.
Perfect. Thanks, Mike. Well, we have 20 minutes to cover a lot. So let's start with focusing on loyalty and retention. You're an expert across all fields. So starting with loyalty, and also a good friend of ours, Josh Prepon from Steve Madden, he was talking about loyalty earlier, and he mentioned that loyalty is very difficult today, unless of course you're an iPhone user and you can upgrade your iPhone every single year. But with brands specifically around fashion, beauty, it's very difficult to create that loyalty. And we've heard this before, loyalty with a big L, loyalty with a small l. Could you help us understand what the differences are and how brands should approach creating loyalty with their customers?
Yeah, this, as you said, this is not a new concept. We've been talking about this for a number of years. I was happy to hear in the previous session the word loyalty was used many, many times. I didn't hear reference to sort of a formal loyalty program, and that's really the distinction here, right? In retail, you have a formal points-based earn burn or some sort of subscription-based loyalty program versus little L, which I think in previous years kind of got deprioritized, but really this is the focus for most of the people in this room, I'm sure, where little L loyalty, which is really just another way of saying, advanced CRM strategies, audience building, and activation with intelligence, is really where you kind of have to start. This is not really a chicken egg scenario. I know for many, many years, retail brands have used capital L formal loyalty programs to drive data capture, self-identification, and sort of get past some of the really more difficult work of understanding customers and capturing their data and putting it in a usable location and platform to be able to activate off of. I think the way we think about this is that you have to start with an underlying data structure, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this, and really start to devise CRM and advanced CRM strategies and segmentation. You can marry that together certainly with a formal loyalty program. We have brands that do that. But really here, this is just a reminder that loyalty is a concept outside of just sort of the formal loyalty programs that you know of and are more than likely part of.
And are there any prerequisites or anything that is an absolute must-have, irrelevant whether you're going for the big L or the small L?
I think, again, it all starts with the underlying data set, and we're going to get into this idea of how we start to understand customers. We all in the roles that we all have, we have thousands, millions of signals available to us from customers on any given day. From simple transactional information to maybe response data to certain marketing messages, to interactions with customer service, to reviews that may have been written, to clickstream data, and we can go on and on and on and on. And really, the fundamental starting point is how well are you listening? How well are your signals being captured? Are they being aggregated, and are you putting them in a form, in a format, and in a platform that is usable to sort of activate off of? And I know we're going to get a bit more into that. So I think that's the sort of foundational principle here.
Perfect. Let's jump straight in. So I'm going to skip this slide. Just a few different data categories. Lots of data has been generated over the last 10 years, or if not more. New devices, new ways to consume and produce data or use the data content. So I'm just going to keep this there for a second. But ultimately, what all brands are trying to get to is an ideal customer profile, right? And you've talked a lot about the different strategies across loyalty, but ultimately you can't create that connection with the customer, that experience, unless you have all the different information. And now, of course, we'll talk a bit about AI, but ultimately also predicting what customer is about to do next. So this is an ideal customer profile, right? Let's call it that. But brands are still struggling to create this profile or have that level of understanding of their customers. So lots to talk about, but maybe let's start with where would a brand begin? What are the sort of the stepping stones of getting this view into their customers?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at these data points sort of individually, we've been able to sort of capture and aggregate these for a long time. Certainly, it's been a challenge for brands, some more than others. But there's nothing necessarily new or particularly breakthrough about the fact that you want to resolve profiles into a single usable customer 360, right? Easy to say, still hard to do, even in 2024, although easier than it has been in previous years. I think some of the more recent innovations over the last couple of years, you could actually only have 2 or 3 of these data points and use some of the tech that's out there with CDPs and identity resolution to fill in the rest. And I think that's been a huge step forward and taken some brands and some businesses that weren't necessarily ready to sort of scale audience strategy and CRM and give them that scale or that acceleration towards something that is more usable. I think really this is a starting point. If we were really to sort of fill the rest of this in, there could be 1,000 more data points. One cautionary tale, though, that I will give you is that 5, 6, 7 years ago, when many of us were probably thinking about or moving into sort of first CDP implementation, right? There was this notion that we needed let's get all 1,000 in there. Let's get 10,000 in there. And you quickly realize that your costs, get out of hand, and you're really possibly only activating on the 10 that you see here. So what should you have in there? What's truly actionable? What are you really activating off of? To what ends? Those are kind of key questions to ask yourself once you get to this point where you have resolved these customer 360s.
So identify the right data sets that are critical. And what would you say the biggest blockers are of creating a good understanding of your customers or something similar to this?
Well, if you're like us, we have 7 brands in the portfolio. We only have 2 brands that have formal loyalty programs. And so you have 5 brands. Some of them never really, before they came into the SPARC portfolio, never really had any active or transactional CRM databases. So one of the hurdles may very well be, hey, we have transactional information sitting in data warehouses, but we've never actually aggregated into an actionable or transactional CRM database. So you could have a challenge around data aggregation. I would tell you that sort of modern CDPs are every year better and better capable of aggregating disparate information and helping you connect it to resolve these profiles. So that may be a hurdle that you have. If you are not happy with how rich these profiles are, there are sources out there, third party. You could go out and gather more information directly from your customers, sort of round out those profiles. So the richer you can get these, the better. And then I think as we move into sort of the tech piece of this a little bit more, we'll talk about what these platforms are typically able to do to create real-time audience segments and continue to update those for sort of maximum effectiveness.
And on the subject of data aggregation and the use of the data, right? Because you talked a lot about data aggregation, and I think as more and more data was created, there was this big data movement where brands are spending crazy amount of money, resources, time storing all this data. And this is a recent report by Forrester that suggests only 20% of that data is being used for personalization. So crazy amounts of resources are being dedicated to storing all this data. But even if you have that single customer view, you might still not be using it in the best possible way. And there's one slide which is beautiful that I want to show you. It's the MarTech 10,000. Quick show of hands. Who has seen this slide before? Yes, a lot of very unfortunate people have seen the slide. It is what marketing nightmares are made of. But this slide there for a specific reason, and Mike, you're probably the best person to talk about this, but we're now going through probably second, third, fourth round of cycles of acquiring different pieces of technology to help brands communicate with their customers. I think, as you mentioned earlier when we were talking, like there's a CDP 2.0 cycle that we're going through, but the challenge here is that we went from data silos to now potentially tech silos, because I've spoken to hundreds of, nearly thousands of brands that have acquired every single piece of technology out there, ESPs, CDPs, CCM, you name it. Sometimes we're speaking to brands who are using multiple ESPs for the same use case, lots of overlapping use cases. So there is a big challenge in the market, right? And obviously we started with data, which is the core, but also technology plays a big part. And just very quickly, typically what we see today is that you might have an ESP, you might have an SMS vendor, you might have something for on-site personalization. You throw a few data points in there, right, to make it a bit more relevant for the person that you're communicating to. You then create a customer profile or a version of a customer profile. You start segmenting, you start creating audiences. And at the end of the day, even if you have best of breed technologies, the best case scenario is an audience-based personalization strategy. And ultimately, where we're all trying to get to is having it all connected, unified, and have this incredible, wonderful picture. But this is more of a setting the scene. You've implemented a whole bunch of different technologies across different brands, so we'd love to understand your take on this particular challenge and where we are in terms of the different cycles of technologies available today.
Yeah, I think a few things I would say. Number one, the 20% number is sort of put out there to make you feel like, oh my gosh, that's not enough. There's so much data left on the table. That's fine, right? And that's true. And you should constantly, like I said before, be looking for those signals and how to aggregate them into your single, view of the customer. But the other side of that is actually okay, right? Because in reality, we're only ever going to be actually activating off of a smaller percentage of our data, right? This was the point I made earlier, which is, you put 1 million data sources in there and you have an equivalent data point diagram like the eye chart you showed, you get lost in that straight away. So it makes a lot of sense, and we learned some very hard lessons over the last couple of years about make sure you understand what are you activating off of, to what end goal, set those campaigns up in the beginning, and truthfully, just make sure you have the right 20%. So 20% is not the issue. Let's make sure it's the right 20%. In reality, as you were stepping through, this build here, and by the way, we all know that there's a proliferation of vendors in tech, and this thing is exploding, and yet client-side teams are getting smaller, and profitability is challenged, and so, we've got a third of the people, trying to sort of understand a market that's 10 times the size. And nobody should feel bad for us, but that's just a reality. But as you're stepping through this build, the steps that you describe are still critically important, and they're still the right ones. We started with first-party data aggregation under, a single CDP, not only so that we could activate off of it, but so we could see how our customer profiles and audiences overlapped, right? We developed a series of customer reporting dashboards to not only socialize the data platform that we had built, but actually be the place where people were looking to say, okay, I need you to surface more insight. What do we do here? What are our audience strategies? And then we chose the 5 or 6 key activation partners, and we built pipes directly from our CDP out to our ESP, SMS, social, other performance marketing programs. And we're going to continue to build on what looks like the right side of this to continue to scale that. So it's a process. It's taken us a few years to get to scale, and we've certainly gotten there in some cases, but we have a long way to go, especially with, and we're going to get into AI a little bit here with the 2 minutes and 28 seconds we have left. But we have so many more tools at our disposal now to activate in new and different ways, and more real-time ways, and more precision ways, so that we can essentially battle against rising media costs and more and more difficult time driving qualified traffic to our sites.
Perfect. There's a lot more to cover here, but I'm going to give you the impossible task of talking about AI in 2 minutes.
Okay.
I think we're in a very fascinating stage of technology, marketing, brand evolution, and we're going from AI that was very, very theoretical to now becoming more and more practical and tangible, right? In a way that we can start applying AI for use cases that could create that retention, that loyalty that we're all talking about. Is there anything that you think is worth highlighting, anything that you've implemented, anything you see work in 1 minute and 30 seconds?
So here's what I can say, and I have my head of digital product out there, shout out to Tiff, who helped big time with this. Don't hire her, but talk to her. So one of the things that we did, and I highly recommend, is take your digital ecosystem or your full omni-channel ecosystem and try and break it down into market sectors, right? Whether it's customer care or PDP experience or fraud or whatever. We split the landscape into about a dozen different sectors, and we very consciously talked about which partner we wanted to work with to develop these AI pilots, and some of them were in single brand, some of them were in multi-brand, and we're now sort of a year into that and starting to really sort of pick our winners and the ones that we want to scale out to multiple brands. So I'd say that. The second thing that we did, and we picked this up from some academics that we went to see speak, is we have a bit of a framework around how to categorize these pilots. And it comes down to these 3 words, which is assist, augment, automate. And I've said this before, but there's this like almost fear that you have to sort of rush all the way to automate. And that sort of prevents you from taking baby steps here. We have most of our pilots that are assisting our current team members. We have some that augment our current team, make a team of 5 feel like a team of 8. And we have a few, mostly in customer care and a few other areas that are sort of fully automated. And we plan to try and move some things down that sort of maturity curve, or up that maturity curve. But they very much sit in the assist and augment phase for the most part. So.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Mike.
Yeah.
Many more things to cover. We'll be around if you have any other questions, but thank you so much.